Ad Astra is a 2019 sci-fi movie that I got to see back when it first premiered, and now I resaw it in May 2020 because I always wanted to rewatch this movie because I consider it to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie of 2019, which was a year full of really great movies. If you see the list for 2019, you're gonna see a lot of amazing and unforgettable and unseen movies that were back that year. But Ad Astra, for me, I think personally, it was one of my favorite movies of that year. Which that doesn't necessarily mean you guys will know what score I'm gonna give it at the final of this review, but yes, it was pretty up there, and didn't I didn't understand why it got so many low scores. If I remember well, I was really apprehensive to go and watch it when it premiered back in wait, I think it premiered back in September, and this movie was one of those movies that first I would like to say that I've been going to cinemas for a long time, and sometimes you have those experiences when sometimes you have one of those shitty experience in at the cinema where you're like, oh my god, I'm not gonna go and watch another movie again. I think you guys know what I'm talking about when people don't stop talking throughout the movie and you're like, why are these people here? Why are these people going to the movie? And this didn't happen to Ad Astra. One reason it was because it's a very intellectual and slow building movie, but at the same time the cinema I went to, it was pretty empty. I think there were like 6 or 8 people at the theater I went to watch this movie, and this movie was like one of a kind of a big disappointment for 20th Century Fox, and sadly, this is one of their last movies before they got bought out by Disney, and they will become 20th Century Studios. And one of the reasons that I heard that this movie got so many bad reviews, it was that a lot of people were comparing it to 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a quite easy comparison to make. And at the same time, I think it's not a fair comparison, because yes, it is a space movie and it's very intellectual, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I think what makes it different from the Stanley Kubrick movie, it's that this movie felt more like how can I say it? It felt more like a hard sci-fi than the 1961, because the 1961 tried a lot of to have some of those psychedelic stuff, space stuff that Ad Astra doesn't have. So in Space Odyssey, you had questions and maybe some kind of answers that are we alone in this universe, and there were some kind of strange things that you could see in Space Odyssey. Ad Astra is more hard sci-fi in my opinion, and at the same time it's more human from some points of view than Space Odyssey. I'd also like to say that what I really one of the things that I observed about Ad Astra is yes, that you could see a lot of the influence from Space Odyssey. Like at the start of the movie, there is like a clear reference to HAL's 3000 big eyeball at the start of Ad Astra, and you can see some influences from Alien, and you can see some influences also in the choosing of some of the songs in the movie. Like they used they used for one of the trailers, they used Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, like they used Johann Strauss's um, Blue Danube in 2000. So yeah, it's a lot of influences that you could see in this movie, but at the same time, the execution is what it makes it stand out. Because at the same time, this space movie is in that generation, that you could say that generation of space movies that you could say that was started in some points of view. I always thought that it was started by Gravity, but no, Gravity is like the most famous examples of space movie, intellectual space movie that is not like Star Wars with spaceships. And no, it's more grounded, but at the same time it is sci-fi. But I don't think that Gravity started this. I think the 2007 Danny Boyle directed sci-fi movie called The Sunshine started this kind of this type of space movie. But Gravity made it famous because Gravity, when it came out at cinemas in 2013, it got 7 Oscar wins. So imagine what studios were thinking, like, yes, we have to make big money on this Gravity trend. So then bam, you got 2014 Interstellar, bam, you got 2015 The Martian, in 2016 you got Arrival, which Arrival in some points of view is a little bit of exception from the rules that I said, that this new generation of space movies, but it's still another common thread between these space movies are the way you see the main character wear his helmet and the framing of the helmet and the main character. And bam, then you have well, in 2017 you had the Blade Runner, which I don't really consider it in that in this subgenre of space movies, but it's an interesting it's interesting to point it out because there wasn't an astronaut wearing a spacesuit in 2017, but then bam, you had in 2018 First Man. And now 2019 at Astra. I wonder what 2020 will hold up for us. So yeah, this new type of space movies I really liked. I have these movies that have scores between 8 and 10s and 9s, and this type of subgenre of space movies I really liked about it. The main plot for Ad Astra, which a lot of people were like, okay, so from how it looks point of view, it looks like 2001: A Space Odyssey, but from a plot-wise point of view, it's Apocalypse Now in space, because Brad Pitt's character has to go and retrieve his father, who is played by Tommy Lee Jones, and we don't know if Brad Pitt is going to go and retrieve his father or kill his father, because Tommy Lee Jones is an estranged father from Brad Pitt, because he left on a space mission and he disappeared like 25 or 30 years ago, and now we are in a future society where everyone doesn't express that much emotions, and that was an interesting thing that I saw in this movie, that I think I also encountered in the Blade Runner from 2017, when they had those psychological, those continuous day-to-day or hour-to-hour continuous psychological tests that that wanted to keep in check their population, that always wanted to make sure that they don't show that much emotion, and those things are what we're missing in 2001 Space Odyssey, because 2001 is very cold, and although Ad Astra at a superficial point of view, you could say it's also a cold space movie. It starts showing a lot of emotion, especially from Brad Pitt's character. He starts showing more and more emotion when this society has made him like a cold weapon and a cold army man. He starts showing emotion, and he starts realizing that because he was cold, he lost his wife. He got separated from his wife, and a lot of anger was built up into him because he wasn't expressing emotions anymore. And although a lot of people have compared Ad Astra to Apocalypse Now, I see some of the comparison, but at the same time, in Ad Astra, it's more like closure for Brad Pitt, because he wants to find his father and reconnect with him, and he thinks that he isn't a complete man until he meets the man that most influenced him during his lifetime, because he also pursued a career of astronaut like his father, so he was very influenced, and he talks about how his father was also a cold man, and that's why he also became a cold man, and that, in my opinion, is a very human story that you wouldn't see in a blockbuster, that a man just wants to find his father, and he's in some way so convinced about this that he goes to the other part of space to find him and get closure, or even save his father. That was interesting, and I really liked this about it, and I really liked how Brad Pitt acted in this movie. I also liked how Tommy Lee Jones acted in this movie. He showed so many emotions, especially at some point, in one point of the movie. I'm not gonna spoil when that happens, but I was so happy to see Tommy Lee Jones again act, because in my opinion he hasn't cared that much about in a movie, I think, since No Country for Old Men. So that's, I think, is like since 2007 he hasn't cared that much in acting anymore. And I also was happy to see Donner Sutherland again. So for me it was like a mini reunion for two members of the Space Cowboys movie from back in 2000. And yeah, this movie, Ad Astra, although other comparison, I would say, you could see also with the monkeys that appear during this movie. Those are also compared, and you could see that the director of Ad Astra, James Gray, who apparently directed directed a lot of movies that I haven't seen from him. I've heard of The Lost City of Zet and The Immigrant, but this is my first movie that I ever got to see from James Gray, and this guy is a master with the camera. A lot of his framing is are breathtaking, and also well, from one negative side that I want to talk about Ad Astra, I think, and a positive for 2001 Space Odyssey. 2001 used a lot of practical effects, and those effects haven't aged that much, but Ad Astra had like gave me like a strange feeling when watching those big space effects, those special effects. Especially there was a set piece at the start of the movie when uh, Brad Pitt's character had an incident on a space station. Those special effects, at some points I was like, oh, they are very good. They're even better than when I saw the movie original at the cinema. But at the same time, some of the special effects I was like, oh, they look even much worse than I got to see them at the cinema. So that was like a strange imbalance that I saw in the special effects. But for me, that wasn't the important part about the movie. Also, the soundtrack was amazing. This guy, Max Richter, who is born in Germany, this guy is an amazing composer. I really recommend you guys checking out his work. Some of his pieces that I really liked are On the Nature of Daylight and November, which I really recommend listening for. Max Richter. He's an amazing composer, and I really recommend people follow this guy, and I hope to hear his compositions in other movies of his. I think he's also had like a contribution to the 2016 sci-fi movie Arrival, where most of the songs were composed by Johan Johansson, but I also think he had like some songs that were inserted in that movie. Also, I don't want to forget about this, including in the review. Although the movie, so I think part of some of the criticism towards the movie was that it was like slow, but in my opinion, there were like it was like a character piece, and it tried to immerse you in that movie. And there were scenes where you could see that they were clearly influenced by the 70s with sepia tones and browns and yellows and oranges. And also at the same time, most modern movie don't have scenes, they have set pieces. And this movie also had set pieces where the incident that I talked about with that had Brad Pitt at his character at the start of the movie, but at the same time there were also scenes where you got immersed and there was dialogue and you see drama and you could see characters developing. So those things that I really liked, and this movie will turn out to be one of those underrated movies that maybe I will give it more shine when people will hear my review. Who knows? I'm curious how you guys saw this movie and what did you think about it, and what do you think about originality versus execution, because a lot of movies are not completely original. Even the original Star Wars is very influenced by samurai culture. Yeah, not all movies are original, but the execution with what matters. So I'm curious if you guys know other examples where movies are better for the sum of its parts, or are better because of the execution and not of its all originality. All in all, I'm gonna give this movie like a 9 out of 10. It's more like a movie that I really recommend for people that want to see immersive and intellectual sci-fi movies. Thank you for listening.